Hello, everybody. Welcome into another edition. This is Cross Functionality, the show connecting coaching, baseball, softball, male, female, hosted by former college baseball and softball players. And of course, as always, thank you for granting us your time listening today, whichever day it may be, and whatever time of day on whichever platform, Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Okay, episode 26 today of Cross Functionality as we talk about training with intentions. Let me bring in friend co-host, softball national champion at the University of Alabama, and current day renowned coach, Cassie Reilly-Boccia.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. I'm excited.
Diehard Giants fan.
I don't know. I don't know about diehard. I used to be a diehard Yankees fan, and I feel like the Giants just kind of Giants, Rangers, Yankees kind of fall into that boat.
There's a key word. There's a key word there. Used to be a diehard Yankees fan. What happened?
You know what? I don't know if I'm diehard anything except Alabama softball right now.
Oh, yeah, true.
You know, I don't know if as I gotten older, I don't know if professional sports have impressed me less or I just have drifted away, but I'm nowhere near as into it as I used to be 96, 98, 99.
I was on Google the other day. Well, two things. I Googled, I was curious what football coaches' offices look like. And I saw a picture of Nick Saban. Have you ever been in Nick Saban's office or around that area?
I've been in Nick Saban's office 4 different times. I've tried on all his rings. I got to meet him and talk with him in there.
How big is his office? I want to know because on the ESPN.com, after I Googled it, there's a bunch of like Chris Peterson from Washington has his office in the stadium, beautiful view. But Nick Saban's office, it looks like it's as big as like an apartment. So I get the luxury of talking to somebody who actually was there.
You know what? It has a lot of stuff in it. So I think if you took everything out, it would look even bigger. So he's got his big desk, the big windows, huge storage areas on the side with people who have sent him stuff, championship balls signed by players, whatever that is. So that's all along the sides in these big cabinets. And he's got this big table and couches for like a seating area with recruits. And that's where all the rings were set up when I was in there. And then we had an athlete come play softball for Alabama. Her father used to play NFL football and had known Nick Saban. So I was kind of taking her around on her visit. And that was one of the reasons I got to go in there and actually talk with him. But yeah, it's kind of like an office and a seating area all in one. But I do think, he's got this little I think off to the side, there's this little coaching area recruiting area that's like very, very private that no one's allowed in there. I think that has all the names of people they're going after and all that.
Okay. So it was huge.
Yeah, it was big.
And I've heard from everybody that's talked to him that he's a really good guy. Is that the vibe you got?
Yeah, it seems like it. And especially because you look at Alabama football and what it is. I interned a couple times in the weight room, which was connected to the same building his office was in. Mm-hmm. He's Nick Saban. He doesn't have to get to know a strength and conditioning intern, but for that summer, he would go out of his way to say hi. We'd pass each other. He knew my name for that summer just because we passed each other enough. And so I appreciate that because that's something he didn't have to do. That was not going to be anything for his clout. That wasn't going to help his football team. That was just him being a genuinely nice person. And I do think he spends a lot of time talking to other teams on campus, which again, you're the biggest football coach in college football. You don't have to do those things, and he does. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I was David Pollock. We mentioned this on the lab last week. David Pollock was the analyst next to him during the national championship game when he was did you see that? Yep. And David Pollock said now the SEC or something runs through Georgia, and the look that Nick Saban gave him was that of I'm going to murder you. Who the fuck do you think you're talking to?
You know what? I think he's super, super competitive. And I think that's when he would come talk to us, he was super mellow, even keeled, but then he would explain what it meant to be a competitor and what it meant to not just beat a team. And the biggest thing that he used to say is listen, you guys are good. We're good. He's like, we could kind of just practice, not really practice with intention. We could kind of just go through the motions and we beat most of our teams. He goes, but we don't play to beat a team. He goes, we play to make their ass quit. And they had MTAQ, make their ass quit as their big thing because, and even he set the image. He's like, you're facing a pitcher. He's like, that's the thing they love to do. They love being a pitcher. Their identity, the pride is, and you want to play them and you want them to actually just want to walk off the field and quit. That's what you practice for.
Beat them down so badly.
Yeah. It was cool. So you realize how competitive he is.
And the way to do that is to do things the right way, right?
Yep.
Pretty simple philosophy. Although I could see why he didn't work out in the NFL. I think that
Yes.
make MTA having that plastered around stadium walls and the locker room probably wouldn't really. I don't know. I was looking at a video online. The new Colorado coach. I don't know if he was offensive or defensive coordinator, but he was making the guys like they were in the military, like stand up and then sit back
Yeah.
down, and it seemed a little tedious to me. And I could tell that guy's never going to work out in the NFL if he ever makes the jump. I don't think he'll ever make the jump though.
Yeah, and you know what? He even said he didn't feel like he had as much of a connection with the athletes like he liked in having with college athletes. He missed the recruiting aspect with like molding younger athletes. But one thing he mentioned one time was that he had an athlete that was really struggling with anxiety, like specifically performance anxiety, social anxiety when it came to media, and he was self-medicating with marijuana to try to calm down. And he tried to go through upper management to try to get this guy help, and there was just no help. There was no resources. It was like, we've paid him to do a job, he's going to do a job. And he realized even when he was at LSU, there were so many more resources to help athletes to like actually get them in a better position. And you see the job he's done with like everybody who's about to go get drafted. They have a money management course, and there's actually education on like how do you deal with the fame? How do you deal with this? It's just, you could tell he like really cares about them. As you know, you say this about a lot of people. Maybe this is just the persona. It seems like for everything that they do and everything they spend money on, that he actually cares about what happens to the athlete. You know?
Yeah, he's been quoted as saying working in the NFL is like working in a factory.
Mm-hmm.
And where college athletics is more pure. And I could see that. I really enjoy on a Saturday when, you and I get done recording and then I get done recording with Jake. I enjoy the kind of flipping on the TV and going through different college football games, especially like on Fox or like, I don't know, ESPN or ABC. And you just get even through the TV screen, you get that vibe of that purity of college sports, the tailgating, how parents are more involved because they're watching their kids play. The students are more involved. I get the NFL is a behemoth when it comes to professional sports, and they do business like no other. But college football is different from all other college athletics in how they do their business. And it really makes it fun for the casual fan like myself, who grew up like you in the Northeast, where it's bigger NFL. But now I look at it, and for me, it's kind of almost like, I don't know, 60-40 NFL to college, almost 50-50. I really enjoy the pure aspect of college football, notwithstanding the NIL has kind of changed all that.
I was just going to say, I hope it doesn't change it too much. But yeah, I agree. Because you still have, at the end of the day, like even if you flip on a women's volleyball game in the finals, like, holy cow, these girls are playing their last game they'll ever play. Like most of them will not go on. Maybe one of them will go on and play something else after this. So it's like you're getting to experience a very, very rare moment where, like, even if you watch, think about everybody wants to go watch, like when it's going to come time, LeBron James is going to retire, everyone's going to go watch his last game. Yeah. But how often are you going to actually be able to witness a team of people who are playing probably their last game ever, and it's happening at the same time? It's like, That's just a very rare thing you'll probably only experience in college athletics every now and then.
I wonder what Nick thought about Stetson Bennett having a mortgage and 2 kids winning the national championship. It should be illegal.
Yeah, I mean,
25 years old. He's still playing. No, it should be illegal.
I know. I hear you.
He has a freaking mortgage. Also, I was on YouTube this week, speaking of the Yankees, looking at old like Yankee Stadium clips. Loudest Yankee Stadium has ever been. Some cool moments in there. Like for the years that you mentioned too, 98, 99, 2000.
I'll say Tino Martinez's grand slam into the upper deck was like, I remember being a kid and being
against
like,
the Padres. That was against the Padres in 98.
Yes.
And I remember when the ball hit in the upper deck, all this beer went flying up in the air.
Yep. I had the VHSs of like the championship highlight tapes of like where they do like a little documentary of like the whole season interviewing players, and I used to just be glued to the TV. And I remember my grandpa and my parents being like, how obsessed I was with winning a championship. Like,
all right. So what playoff game did you ever go to a playoff game? And the old Yankee Stadium?
No, I never. The only playoff game I've ever been to, it was a very lackluster game. It was later. Gosh, I must have been like, so it was probably 2004, 2005 in that range. They played the Angels. It was very low energy, and they lost. And it was like it was like game 1 or something. That was the only playoff game I ever experienced. But I went to the ticker tape parade in 96 and 99, I believe. That was super cool. But never a game.
All right. So let's get into today's episode, training with intention, discussing that, everything from, warm-ups, hitting, throwing, when not to do it. We're going to be discussing all of that today. So again, subscribe to the podcast, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Listen to the show there and watch the show on YouTube, Softball Strength Academy YouTube page. Hey, this week on the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast, again, subscribe to that show as well. Myself, Jake Epstein, Apple, Google, Spotify. You know the title, you know the deal. We talked about setting proper goals and putting those goals into perspective. In your opinion, when you set proper goals, how do you go about that process, setting proper goals and making them attainable?
Sure. I've run about this 5, 6, 7 different ways since an athlete to now the coach. And I think what I've settled on now is I really make sure I sit down with the athlete. I say, let's start to define attributes of a really successful student athlete. And they'll start naming some things, someone who works out consistently, someone who's super focused, someone, whatever it may be. And then I say, okay, well, where are we currently at? Like, let's define yourself. Where do you feel like you're currently at in comparison to this like perceived ideal of where you want to be, right? This like ideal student athlete. And they'll say, you know what? I'm pretty consistent during these times of the year, but I struggle during these times of the year. Or I'm very confident on defense, but I lack it during offense, whatever it may be. So we list that. And then we kind of fill the middle and say, okay, how do we fill this gap? How do we bridge the gap between where we currently are, where we want to be? And we start to define really tangible items. So, and something that's a little bit more realistic. I know there's like a saying about how to set like these perfect goals. It has to be attainable. It has to be within a certain amount of time, whatever it is. I just want to say, what are tangible things that we can do in order to be this person? And they say, well, you know what? Journaling is really helpful. Talking with my mental performance coach once a month is really helpful, whatever that may be. So now we have these attainable action items to achieve our goals, right? Our goal is to be more confident. What do we have to do to get there? And then, the further discussion is like, okay, how do we fit that into our daily life? Instead of just being like, all right, great, I'm going to be more confident. Great, I want to hit 300. I want to, we want to make sure that we have actual items that are in our control in order to get to where we want to be.
Yeah, and it's almost, we're going to talk about this on the show this week as well. You can break down those goals, not only into smaller attainable goals, but you can break them down based off what you may be doing in that moment. So, okay, I have a hitting goal. This is my goal right now in the cage, or this is my goal to do this in game, or this is my goal on the mound. You can break down those goals that best fit the attributes of where you are as a player and what you need to work on in that certain aspect of your game.
Sure. Yeah. I think it allows you to have a little bit of more focus and, again, going back to it, have some more intention throughout your session. If you're like, why am I here today? Am I here to just get reps in, or am I here to actually get better at directional extension? Am I here to actually get better at timing up a slow pitcher? Am I here to get better at hitting the high pitch on more of a line instead of straight up, And then I think also having like a mental goal too is something that's neglected. We said, everyone jokes about Yogi Berra's quote, so baseball is 90% mental, the other half physical. But if you've played the game, you realize how much it is mental, yet we often just create physical goals and neglect the mental goals sometimes.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast, we talked about setting proper goals this week. So go ahead and take a listen to that. Again, the lab comes out on Mondays at 9 a.m. And of course, our show here, Cross Functionality, every Wednesday at 9 a.m. on various audio and YouTube platforms. Don't forget to email us too if you have any questions, jimbopodcast21@gmail.com, and follow us on social media at Jim Tara and at Coach_Cassie RB on Instagram, at Coach Cassie RB on Twitter. All right, so let's get into today's main topic, training with intention. How do we do that during warm-ups? There's a lot of ways to do such, but I've found, at least for me personally, and I think a lot of athletes can relate to this, you struggle in warm-ups. You just want to get going. You want to get playing. You want to get to what part of that practice, for example, that you want to get to and work on. In warm-ups, how do we train with intentionality or intention? How do we train with intention, and how do we get the most out of those warm-ups to get us properly prepared?
Sure. I think too, defining intention is like you're doing something on purpose. You're doing something with a purpose. It's a very deliberate action. So you're trying to avoid getting into autopilot, right? You're trying to avoid just going through the motions. And I think when you set the tone for that in warm-ups, it trickles to the rest of your practice. So that's why it's become so important. I think even before, like, let's say you're in a huddle, it's like, hey, we are trying to accomplish X, Y, and Z today in practice. We're trying to work on lateral movement, which is why we're going to do these types of exercises in our warm-up. So when someone does a lateral lunge, then to warm up their side-to-side movement, they're actually going into a lateral lunge instead of just, oh, I'm going to push my hip to the side, get a little stretch, talk to my friend, move around, right? They're actually doing it with purpose. So knowing the why behind something is huge. But then I think just constant reminder to your team, constant reminder to your athlete that, hey, we're not just doing this to check a box. We're not just going through a warm-up just to say, hey, I warmed up. We're doing this to get a little bit better. So when we run sprints, you're not sprinting to beat the person next to you, especially if they're slower than you. You're sprinting as hard as you possibly can that day. You're finishing through the line every single time, not just slowing up right before the line. Because again, practice doesn't make perfect, it makes permanent. We're reinforcing these unintentional habits then.
Yeah. And when you say, like running sprints, for example, there's that internal competition that somebody has, right? Mm-hmm. That they want to beat the person next to them. I wonder though, with doing sprints or doing all of these things in warm-ups, if sometimes we warm up as athletes too much and we lose focus rather than just pointing out some of the things that we need to work on, or at least some of the things we need to get loose in warm-ups. Example, I don't know, if you're doing squats, you're not going to do a chest stretch, right? You're going to get the groins and get the hip flexors activated. You're not going to do like a lat stretch or something like that. So I do wonder, consolidating warm-ups, if that's the proper way to go to get the best out of those warm-ups.
Yeah. And I think, if you're warming up a team, if you're warming up an individual, if you're warming up for yourself, there's a lot of reflection that needs to happen. Yeah. And I think sometimes coaches will get caught up on, well, this is the program I have. These are the reps and sets I had written down. I have to stick to this, when really that should be your guide that you then make adjustments based on how the athletes are doing. The athletes are super unfocused. They're kind of chit-chatting. They might take a little bit. You might need to get to a little bit more of an intense action sooner so that they need to focus on what they're doing and they can't just be chit-chatting as they're doing it. Or if you notice, like, they're in a great mood, they're ready to go. I don't want to waste this good, like, vibe, good intentioned, focused effort on doing 20 more minutes of a warm-up drill. Let's get into something, right away. So again, you have this guideline, but you don't want to be married to it where it's going to then affect how you can actually be a human in coaching.
Oh, you know what I forgot to tell you about, by the way?
What's that?
I was watching a video of a Brewers prospect last night, Sal Frelick. I said before he was drafted, I said, this kid's going to be a stud because he just hits, right? Mm-hmm. And this past year between AA and AAA, he hit like somewhere close to like 320. He was just incredible. And I was looking at his video from this past year last night, Friday night, after I went to the gym. I'm really like exposing myself as like a huge, nerd right now, watching baseball film on Friday night. He does certain things that you need to do to make a swing successful. Sounds very familiar, like Jim's 4 pillars of hitting, which we did an episode on that a while back. So please go back and listen now. But when it comes to hitting, though, you can have those 4 pillars of hitting. That's great. But maybe breaking down and being able to filter what you need to work on as a hitter, that comes with training with intention. For example, working on those 4 pillars. You can't exactly work on your vision, but you can work on timing. You can work on getting on plane with the pitch. You can work on understanding and having a real approach, and then setting that proper goal as you go up there. That's part of that training, right? I mean, with hitting, that's part of that training with intention.
Yeah, you have a reason, right? I talked about my pyramid of focus when I have, pyramid progression for hitting. So when athletes come in, it's not like, all right, let's get warm, let's just grab a bat, let's take a couple swings, let's go. It's, hey, you're here. It's November. You don't play for 4 months. We're probably not doing anything crazy when it comes to timing today. We're going to focus on this, this, and this. And this is why we're focusing on this. And now all of a sudden, when you have an athlete doing tempoed swings, that's slow motion swings, essentially, for a high and outside pitch, they're not rolling their eyes. Like, depleting their willpower to do this, they're like, okay, I know exactly why I'm doing this. I'm not going to be doing this for the next 6 months. I'm doing this now so I can set myself up for power on this pitch later. And now all of a sudden it's a completely different training session.
Yeah. I don't know, I guess but this goes into being a high level athlete, right? I mean, people may scoff at this and say, well, you train with intention, you try to set all these goals, you get inside your head, but you have to, in my opinion, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have to have, and maybe I break things down too much just in life in general, and maybe that's an issue of mine that I need to work on, but you have to kind of break everything down and just be able to consolidate each goal and each training method, whatever you're doing with hitting, throwing, it doesn't really matter, and understand why you're actually doing it. Have a purpose to what you're doing, right? And then, trying to get better at that certain thing.
Yeah. And that's going to be the fine line between how do you train with intention, but how do you not cross the line between overanalyzing every little thing, right? You don't want to all of a sudden get in a position where, one of the ways I talked about training with intention during hitting, let's say, is not concerning yourself with quantity over quality, right? Not being like, all right, we're going to take 100 swings today. It's like, no, we're going to take a few high quality swings. We're going to take 3 to 5 swings, take a step out and reset. But you don't want it to be 3 to 5 swings. Then it's like, all right, let's talk about exactly what you did on every single swing. You do want the athlete to be able to naturally flow through their swing, have some athletic ability, but you also don't want to just say, okay, we're taking 25 swings in a row, because come swing 10, how much intention are they actually have left, right? It takes a lot of focus. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of brain power to be like, okay, this pitch, high focus, reset. There's no way you could have that same focus on 25 pitches in a row.
I mean, Albert Pujols once said that, right? You'd rather take 100 quality swings than 400, whatever, really bad swings. I mean, it's, and athletes, I think, sometimes get into that loop, especially when they, are in high school, college, they just swing.
Mm-hmm.
And Ted Williams, there's one thing I love Ted Williams. I agree with pretty much everything that he has said, everything that he has taught in the past, and everything that he's professed about hitting. There's one thing I don't agree with. And again, the guy who hit 400, so, bear with me on this, but I don't agree with the notion of, well, I'm going to hit till my hands bleed. Well, that's fine, but they better be really good swings, and they better be really good quality swings when your hands are indeed bleeding.
Yeah, maybe that worked for him, let's say, but you think of it when you're
a veteran too, so maybe
yeah, right. That might just be a mentality thing. You think about when you're younger too, like there is a certain time, like when kids are younger, where it's like, yeah, let's go play wiffle ball and let's take as many swings as you want. And like, you don't have to worry about intention necessarily then. Like, you're trying to see how that athlete self-organizes, and they're just trying to work on natural hand-eye coordination at that point. But, as an athlete that gets older and you'll start to see it too. You'll start to see, especially in a team setting, I'll notice right away, girls will stop making eye contact. They'll start fidgeting. They'll take a really good swing and then they'll take a really poor swing, and they have the same reaction to both because they don't really know why one happened or the other happened. They just, the practice is just happening to them instead of them dictating how they are making that practice useful for them.
Yeah. How do you train with intention? That's our topic today, episode 26. How do you do it on the throwing side?
I think it's very similar to like the outline, at least for hitting. Hey, here's what we're working on today. We have a specific focus. And I can give you an example too of what we work on with our Velo U athletes. It's our baseball, softball throwing end of our program. We'll have certain days where they have a Velo pen. So they're about to go, they've trained for it. They've built up to it. They go into their bullpen and their only focus is velocity. They do not care about where that ball is going. We take metrics, we take arm care, we take a look how it goes, but they have a specific focus. They're throwing 8 to 10 balls of just velocity. And then, you come out of it, you reset, you rebuild a couple days later, a few weeks later, whatever it is. Now you have an accuracy pen. It's completely different intention now. Now we maybe are taking some off of velocity and seeing how our velocity reacts when we're having accuracy in mind. So again, you have a specific focus. You have a program that's called rewiring so that okay, my goal for today is to rewire my arm path. It's not for increased velocity today. It's not for accuracy. It's just to get my arm path to feel where it needs to be. So again, you have purpose to it, and it's not just, hey, let's go have a catch and then let's see how hard I can throw. There's deliberate, intentional purpose behind it.
So we've talked about warm-ups, we've talked about hitting, we've talked about throwing. When you just completely abandon what we're talking about today, training with intention. When do you not do it, and when do you kind of pull back a little bit?
So I mean, I briefly mentioned when you're younger, right? Like I have, I've gotten emails that say, "Hey, can you work with my 4-year-old? He's really having a hard time getting on plane." And
4 years old.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I get it. This is coming from a position of love, right? Parents love their kids. They want the best for their kids. But there's certain times where it's like, you do not need a hitting lesson. You need to have fun with that kid in the backyard and just enjoy wiffle ball and whatever else they're interested in. When you get into a game, you don't want to be there and being like, okay, I'm working on directional extension. I'm working on this. I'm working like the idea of training with intention is that you've trained yourself to be intentional with everything you've done so that when you get to the game, you get to just let you play the game. And because you've trained with it, you know you're going to play with it. It's not something you have to hyper focus on. It's not something you have to like, you shouldn't really have this agenda for a game other than to just compete, play your best, let your best athletic ability take over. And again, too, what's super cool is even if it's in warm-ups, hitting, throwing, one thing that we sometimes forget is the way we train in a weight room can impact the way we play in a game, because we can be saying, hey, I'm going to make the last set my best set of the day. I'm going to make reps 8, 9, and 10 just as powerful, just as fast as 1, 2, and 3. Or else I'm going to fight for that. So now you get to the end of the game, you get to the end of like a pressure situation, and you've already trained yourself to be accustomed, to be focused, deliberate, intentional with your repetitions, with your sets at the end, so that we're not coasting to the finish line. We haven't practiced coasting, if you will. Right. We have instead practiced deliberate intention every single time.
All right. So a final point I want to bring up and ask you about today as we discuss training with intention, episode 26 of Cross Functionality. Again, subscribe if you haven't done so already. Watch the show, Softball Strength Academy YouTube page. When do you implement this type of training with intention? When's the right time to implement it, and when's the right time to kind of back off? You kind of alluded to it right there, but when is that balance? When do you strike that proper balance for the athlete?
I think you're going to start to see when the athlete is craving it, right? They're going to show up, they're going to be bored in practices, or they're going to be bored with training because there isn't a direct focus, right? They're going to start to graduate out of like, okay, this gets to be fun, to now they're craving this focus. They're craving something a little bit more. And I think that's when you can start to review some goal setting. You know, it's a perfect place to start to really outline your intention, right? You start with your goal setting. You start with, why are we here today? What exactly are we working on? And it's also too, this goes all the way up to professional ball. When I was at the Pirates, they were like, hey, we have a reason for every single thing we're doing right now. We are not going to waste your time. And it's all of a sudden these athletes appreciate it, right? It's necessary at all stages of it to just refresh, refocus. But I do think you'll start to see that cusp where the athlete starts to get a little bored with, okay, we're having fun. We're 8, 9, 10, 11. We're in that range where we can start to introduce it a little bit and then really be full force with it right around that 12-year-old range.
I can't get out of my head that a 4-year-old or father of a 4-year-old emailed you, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Wanting a hitting lesson.
Yes.
Reminds me of there's a Georgia baseball coach. I don't know if you've seen this on Instagram or Twitter, where he throws to his son, like in their living room. He throws like a little wiffle ball or whatever.
Wait, I have seen that. I didn't realize that was a Georgia coach, though. That's awesome.
I think he coaches it. I know he's a college coach. I'm not sure if it's at Georgia, but yeah, the kid, he threw him a fastball like really hard, and the kid missed it and then threw the bat across the room.
Yep.
That's the type of fun you should be having with your 4-year-old, not hitting lessons and trying to get on plane with a pitch. By the way, that kid has a pretty nice swing. Who's the kid? There's one kid that looks like a little Pete Alonso in the backyard with his swing. I don't know. I've seen
the one that bat flips it, the little blonde.
Yes, the blonde kid. Yes.
Yeah, I always wonder. Like, I want to
incredible.
Pin those things and be able to track that kid.
Yeah, I know.
Where is he going to end up?
His swing really is pretty incredible. It's better than a lot of high school kids.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, the biggest thing is like, how much time do you get with a kid between school and work and weekends that are busy? Like, just enjoy outside time. And if they don't want to take swings, no big deal. If they want to do something else, awesome. If they want to like hit a kickball with a bat, like whatever, like they should be having fun at that age for sure, and not being in a structured setting, being told exactly what to do or how to do it.
Well, there's another lesson in there for everybody. If your kid is 3 or 4 years old, they don't need to get on playing with the pitch. They need to have fun.
There you go.
Even if they're 8 or 9, they simply need to. Well, although when I was 8 years old, my dad was in the car after a game with my dad, and he asked me, he said, "Why do you play, this game?" I think it was baseball. I don't remember. And I go, "I play to have fun." And he flipped out on me. He says, "No, you play to win."
That's
And
awesome.
he went into a 30-minute lecture about how I play to win.
There you go.
At 8 years old. I'm sorry. I was just trying to get through Mrs. Alexi's third grade class when I was 8, but okay, I'll try to win next time. I'll go balls to the wall. Next week, episode 27, getting comfortable with failure. Ooh, that's who gets comfortable with failure? I don't know.
I think that's the most important thing.
I know. We're gonna have to break that down in
Cool.
many facets, many parts next week. And again, if you have any questions, email us, jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. What's going on at work? Softball Strength Academy. Anything I should know about?
We are in our busy season, so we are coaching a ton. We got our teams there, so just look out for Instagram posts. And then if you are a coach, if you're a parent and you're looking for more drills, or you just feel burnt out or stale, not knowing how to progress or regress certain aspects of the swing, definitely check out our drill library. All of those links are in our Instagram.
Perfect. Alrighty, well, thank you very much, everybody, for listening, watching episode 26, episode 27 next week, and we will talk to you then.